Welcome to Rerouting Logistics, a brand new podcast brought to you by Aspian Search and Selection. I'm John Wilson, the Head of Transport and Logistics Recruitment at Aspian, and in this series we're partnering with the former Senior Traffic Commissioner and CEO of Beverley Training Consultancy. Together we're on a mission to raise awareness around key topics and issues that are impacting the world of logistics. Some of the things we're going to be exploring are diversity and inclusion, women in logistics and young people within the industry. And in each episode, we will sit down with a key influential figure within logistics to shine a light on the reality of working within the sector. Did you know that within a sector that employs almost 3 million people within the UK, that women only make up less than 20% of the workforce? Well, today, we're going to be breaking down the topic of diversity and inclusion with the incredible Sharon Kindleysides. Sharon is the Chief Executive of the CILT and has had a fantastic career in the industry spanning over 20 years. So without further ado, Sharon, I'll leave you in Beverley too.
Hello to you, Sharon. First of all, a great big warm welcome to you at the Pod Cafe in Liverpool.
Thank you, Beverley. It's lovely to be here.
It's lovely to be able to have a good chat to you about some things that are presumably a bit of mutual interest, not just to us, but hopefully to people listening. A few minutes about yourself, Sharon, and how you have got to where you are today. How long you've been in your current role and where have you come from and where are you going to?
Well, I joined the CILT, which is the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, last May. And previously to that, I'd been working in the intelligent transportation field, really looking at how systems work in transport and how we keep our cities and roads moving. And moving to the CILT was quite a big move for me, but being in a membership organisation, I represent everyone across the whole industry. So I've come from probably being in quite a niche segment of transport to now embracing the whole profession, and looking forward, I'd really like to just make a difference and make sure people know what the profession's about, and maybe to give it a bit of a better reputation, because it does tend to get a bit of a bad name sometimes.
I'd certainly agree with that. It does have a bad reputation sometimes, and undeservedly so. But going from managing systems to managing people, big change.
Massive change. I did have staff working for me, and I worked for Transport for New South Wales, and we were writing computer programs. But going from that sort of an environment where you're delivering a product to when you are actually the product itself, and in our case, we've got 13,000 individual members, all of them with slightly differing wants, needs and requirements. It is a lot of juggling and keeping a lot of balls in the air.
I can imagine. So CILT, lots of us who work in the sector know what it is, but equally lots of us who work in the sector don't know what it is. They might have heard of it. Why would I become a member?
I think it's a fantastic community. We cover absolutely everybody working in transport, logistics, supply chain, operations management. And I think that the USP we've got is we represent everybody. There'll be something for everybody. There might be an interest group, there might be an article they find useful, and there'll be people they can associate with. Particularly a lot of our members might be in SMEs, or they might be in a very niche industry, and it means they can find people like themselves just to talk to about, their daily work lives.
So is that what the benefit is of being in a professional membership organisation?
I think it is. It's having people around you can talk to who are on your level and understand your problems, rather than having to start from scratch by explaining, well, this is the situation, can you imagine? You can just go straight into the conversation and go, well, what do you think?
Okay, so you're nearly a year into the role. What have you identified as being really important to your members? And we'll talk about your members in a moment and who they are.
I think one of the things we've identified is just how different members' needs are at different stages of their careers. So somebody's just coming into the profession compared to somebody that's at a senior management level, and everyone's got very different needs at different points in time. Some of it's training, mentoring, getting new jobs. Some of it's first step into management. And then for slightly older members, some of it's giving something back and wanting to be involved in actually bringing the next generations through. So it's quite a spectrum.
And the mentoring programme that CILT run is quite important, isn't it?
Oh, it very much so. And I think that's one of the things we can offer. We've got a lot of members really willing to give up their time and to talk to younger or new members in the profession. And I'd like to think they value that.
Well, I do mentoring. I've done 3 and I learnt as much as I think the mentees did. Whether they learnt anything from me is another matter, but that's by the by. So your members, how many are blokes? How many are not blokes? As a percentage?
We have a substantial number of gentlemen. We are trying very hard to grow the female side of our membership. And interestingly, actually, people that visit our website, a third are ladies and two-thirds are gentlemen. So I think we're being slightly better on the social media side of things than maybe as we do in our normal engagement. But it's absolutely an area I'm keen to address. And also for the people who are non-binary as well, I'd like there to be no boundaries to people joining our organisation.
Okay, what about age? The transport sector and all of those organisations that work with it are not known for being necessarily young. How do you tackle that particular challenge?
I think it gets back to making sure our offering is, I don't want to say age appropriate because that sounds a bit strange, but that we've got different offerings in different age groups. The way a 20-something wants to engage is predominantly online, it's virtual, compared to sort of say maybe it's older members who want to meet in person or go on visits. So I think it's making sure we tailor the offering. We had a really successful student conference recently, and we did that as hybrid. So we had around 100 students in person and 170 students online. So by offering that sort of opportunity, they can join how it fits in best for them. And they don't necessarily have to make a long, expensive train journey on a cold and wet day.
Do you think a lot of that's post-COVID as well, in that people are much more happy to engage digitally than they ever were before the pandemic?
I think it is, and we had a whole 3 years where all we did was pretty much engage online. And I think a lot of people have found out it's very easy if you can just dip into something rather than have to make a special journey. I know for one, if there's something on, say, at 6:30 at night, I probably wouldn't have gone in person, say I had to go to London, but it's really nice to be able to put it on and then sit in the comfort of my own home with a cup of tea and listen and get some knowledge rather than maybe taking out my whole evening.
And you can do the bottom half in your pyjamas.
And I can do the bottom half of my pyjamas.
Absolutely. So can I just ask about how CILT represents the professionalism? Profession's a word that I know CILT likes to use a lot and quite properly. There are other organisations, membership organisations, where you have to be a member of that organisation to be able to advance your career. CILT and indeed the transport sector's not been so good at that. And in some respects, we're our own worst enemy. What can you do to drive that so that people can only advance up the career ladder if they're members or they've got the appropriate qualifications from CILT?
A little bit of a spoiler, coming very soon, we're launching a new programme, and the idea behind the programme is that we can actually help people progress by having a certified approach to it as well as the normal membership approach. And we're doing that in partnership with a lot of organisations and affiliates. So we will go into an organisation and help them develop their training programme so it lines up with the requirements to become a member, a chartered member and a fellow. And then for them, their employees, if they want to follow the path through. And I think this sort of career progression training is really useful. The industry, the profession is so broad. The sort of training somebody might need to run a bus company or work in a bus company is completely different to somebody working in a fulfillment centre, completely different to somebody working in export. So it's really looking at the core competencies. What do you need to be a professional? All of those competencies, and then having the very specialist ones that are specific to your work environment.
But the people skills will be transferable across those sectors, won't
Absolutely, they? Yes. And that's where we're trying to go, saying you don't have to be a specialist in logistics or transport. Come from another industry, you've got these great transferable skills in people management that you can slot into logistics and transport and find an absolutely amazing career for yourself.
So I know that CILT's worked hard to get a number of corporate members for a professional membership organisation to go to corporate members. What was the justification for that? And does it mean that the corporate members will engage with the individual members, maybe on the programme that you've just told us about?
The rationale behind it was we were having some quite large organisations who would have numerous members. And we wanted to both engage with the individual members and with them. And also one of the great benefits of being a corporate member is the training programs, and corporate members get a discount. So by becoming a corporate member or an affiliate, we could actually work more closely with them and develop programs with them that meant that the training they got was very, very specific to their organisation. And we also do an assessment program which gives people, organisations, an ability to assess where they are on this capability framework and then build on that. So it was really, individual members are absolutely the heart of the organisation. It's where we've got 10 or 20 in one organisation, it's quite good to be able to do something for them together. And on the converse side, when we're looking for speakers or at conferences, it's quite nice to have a group of people who are already engaged that we can go to and say, would you like to speak, or could you speak, or give us some case studies. So it's nice to have it go both ways.
Do people still go to conferences post-pandemic?
Oh yes, our Women in Logistics conference is already sold out for in-person tickets.
Oh, right. Okay, that was a really good plug, which I didn't set up for you. Just make that really clear. So post-pandemic, you and I are in a lift.
Yep.
The top floor's number 10. And you've got 10 floors to pitch to me as to why I should join any professional membership organisation. What are you going to say?
It's a way of finding people like you that you can talk to.
Or not like me.
Or not like you. It's very much about, and I quite like the expression, find your tribe. I know it's a bit strange, but actually being able to talk and being a network of people who are like you, have the same problems, have the same challenges, is quite nice. As I said before, if you're in an SME or in a very small organisation, you don't necessarily meet people who like you every day. So it's really that freedom, that safe space to talk about your job, talk about your problems, and actually get a bit of networking and a bit of fellowship in there for your downtime.
Okay, so now we're on our way down from 10 to 1. And I say to you, I've just qualified from a particular university. I've done an ordinary degree. You've got 10 floors to sell to me why I should join the Transport and Logistics Centre and why I should go to organisations like Aspian to recruit. What's your answer?
It's an amazing place to work. The whole sector is fantastic. There are so many different jobs. You could actually go in on any job, see if you like it, go to a different job if you don't. The field is just so wide, and people are always going to need transport.
That's true.
So you've got to go from A to B, move things from A to B. You may not be doing the same job every day for the rest of your life, but you will be in an industry that has a job for you for the rest of your life.
And it's full of diverse people?
It is not as full of diverse people as I would like it to be, but we accept that and we are trying to tackle it. And I mean, look at me, I'm the first female CEO of CILT in 102 years.
And do you think you can change more from within than from without?
Yes, very much. I think so. And I'm a great believer in, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I am trying to speak as widely as I can. Both just talk to me, I'm a normal transport professional. So it's a woman on a stage, but also talking about the diversity, the authenticity, and particularly about some of the issues around mental health, which I think we tend to brush under the table. But I'd like to use my position. If I'm on a platform, let me talk about it.
Okay, so talking of job interviews, if you went for a job interview tomorrow, what's the one piece of advice your mother would give you?
Make sure you want the job.
Oh, right, okay.
I think, and this is something I have learned as I've got older, the number of times you go to a job interview just because you feel slightly panicked. I mean, we all have bills to pay, but sometimes you go for an interview, even if you know in your heart of hearts it's the wrong job. And there have been situations where I've been in that situation, I've still taken the job knowing it was the wrong job, when maybe I should have kept my powder dry. And I think the other thing would be true to yourself about what you want. I spent early parts of my career not telling anybody I had a child because I was embarrassed. I thought they'd judge me.
Oh, your
I don't
poor
know
child.
What. They didn't know they weren't being talked about.
Well, I hope they're not listening to this.
Well, they might not be. So I found it very hard. My starting out in my career in the 90s, actually being able to be a woman and admit to it.
I can't believe that you wouldn't tell anybody you'd got a child.
I just felt they'd judge me or wouldn't give me the job or wouldn't give me the opportunities. I'm now well over that, and anybody who listens get told about my children, so...
Well, I never let mine out of the cupboard, to be honest. But
well, yeah, I find that better, yes.
Excuse me. Okay, so tell me one thing that nobody else knows about you.
If I see a shopping trolley that's lost or been abandoned, I take it back to the supermarket.
I thought you were going to say take it back home.
Yeah, I'll take it home, got millions of them.
Worry.
My logic behind that is it bugs me a bit, and I don't actually care what somebody thinks about me. So if I'm pushing a shopping trolley down the street and everyone's looking at me, so what? Somebody's got to do it.
Absolutely. And it's all part of the supply chain.
It is indeed part of the supply chain.
Theatre, cinema, ballet or opera?
Well, we were talking about my children, and my eldest has just got a place to go to Trinity Laban to study vocal studies, so it has to be opera.
Marvellous. Long walk, quick run or jog?
Very long walk. I love walking. The further the better.
And how do we balance our work life with our home life? I'd love to do a long walk every day. I used to have 2 dogs and they kept me fit and healthy. They've gone to doggy heaven now. So the long walks tend to fall by the wayside. How do we balance work and play, especially when we have our phones and we're expected to respond to emails and messages all times of the day and night?
I do try to go for a walk at lunchtime. Where our offices isn't the most scenic route, but I do sometimes, I usually try to go out for about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour at lunchtime. And then when I get home in the evening, I always, even if it's just around the block, go out for a walk. It's just my sort of resetting time, gives me some fresh air and stops me from getting too sort of desk shaped. So I make time for the walks.
I like the desk shaped. I've been desk shaped for years. The thing about going out in the evening is easier because it's your own time. In the middle of the day, when you've got a demanding boss, I've got a lady here with me who's just started working with me. I would love it if she went out for a walk at lunchtime, but I'd also say, can you just do this? Can I have it in the next half an hour? Do you really expect people to say, I'm off for half an hour on my own? Don't we expect too much of our employees sometimes?
I think sometimes, but I'd like to think, especially at the CILT, people respect each other's lunch breaks. I would never try and put a meeting in, say, between 12 and 2 unless it was absolutely essential, because I know that's when people take breaks. And a lot of my team are very good. Other people go out at lunchtime, or they'll, we've got a little kitchenette. But I think it's up to us as leaders and role models to say, you've been sat down there for a while, why don't you go and get some fresh air, or have you been out? So it's making people aware that it's okay and it's legitimate. And the same at going at 5 o'clock. Go at 5 o'clock, there's no reason not to.
So that's the point, isn't it? It's for the leaders and the managers to set the activities and the behaviours and the standards, rather than from the youngsters, if I call them the youngsters, or is it for them to call us out and say, Beverley, we will have a lunch break? I'm not saying they don't have lunch breaks. You understand the point I'm making.
I think it's a bit of both, but it's very hard if you're new in a job. And as I say, see my previous case study about me, but it's very hard when you're new in a job to feel able to put that forward sometimes. And I think it is up to, other people to sort of encourage you. And a lot of that reflects as well, women in the workplace, sometimes need just to be given a little bit of permission to do something for themselves, particularly about going to something like conferences. So, making sure you take a lunch break, asking about training, asking to go to a conference. Sometimes it's a lot easier if somebody comes up to you and goes, would you like to do this training, or have you looked on this website, or would you like to go to this conference? So I think it's understanding that sometimes people just need permission and that they're a little bit nervous.
Maybe younger people, whether they're male or female or non-binary, maybe they think they should be calling us out more and they should be saying, it doesn't really matter what I am or who I am. What matters is whether I can do the job, and they should be calling out people like us who might be slightly more traditional.
Yeah, I think so very much. And I think, the generations that are coming through at the moment are so much more able to talk about themselves and be a lot more open. I mean, I'm of the mindset from school uniform, I can't wear trousers to work. I'm just so programmed. I do it occasionally, but they're just so much better at these things than we are. And I think we definitely can learn. And you were saying about the mentoring, we do just learn so much more if we mentor a young person. And just understanding, the right language. What should we say? What shouldn't we say? We all learn 80s language. It's completely different now. So, really, really welcome. Tactfully being corrected, not like my children do, which is pretty much hit me around the head with something.
Well, children are allowed to, aren't
yes,
they?
Absolutely.
With their parents or whatever. Sunday roast with all the trimmings, or smashed avocado with poached egg at a nice cafe?
Oh, the avocado with a poached egg.
Oh, no, I'm the Sunday roast at all the trimmings at home. Vegan or meat eater?
I'm a meat eater.
Not a pescatarian?
No.
Okay. So as we move along our sort of life and we look at our career paths, I would call it a career path. Would you call it a career path, or would you have a different name for it?
I think mine's very much got stepping stones, and there's big gaps and raging torrents between some of the stepping stones and other are closer together. But I think, particularly looking at my life, it's gone either sideways or around or a little bit back, or I've tried something off to a side. And I think that's also what's nice about career lives now. You're not expected to be somewhere for 40 years. You can take a little bit of an adventure and say, oh, does this work or does that work? And again, I think as older employers, when you see somebody's CV that has done some adventures, embrace it. It means that they've taken the risk and been happy to take the risk. But yeah, who knows what's coming next?
Well, one of my favourite quotes, the fact we're in Liverpool is neither here nor there, is John Lennon, which is, life is what happens when you're busy making plans.
Very much.
And I just think it's such a great thing to live by. So if we're talking about making plans and we're looking at CILT, where's it going to be in 5 years? And are you still going to be there in 5 years, or will you have jumped onto another stepping stone?
Ooh, where I'd like us to be in 5 years is truly inclusive, with a really good membership offering that appeals to all ages and all levels of people in the profession. We've got a really good standing, I think, in the policy area, and I'd like us to be known as the critical friend that you can come to if you have any questions about anything in supply chain and logistics. Will I still be there? I guess that depends on my board. I would like to be. I'm loving my job, but I'm also aware that you don't want to get stale. There'll be new ideas coming along. We're going through a big period of change. I may not be the right person in 5 years' time to run it. Perhaps it would be a much younger person. That would be phenomenal.
Okay. And in terms of career advancement, what tip would you have to tell your 30-year-old self?
I think it's very much go with your gut feel. If you feel it's wrong, it probably is. It's really hard. Twice it happened to me. I knew it was wrong and I still did something. And
you still did it, but you learned.
Yeah, I took jobs thinking, oh, this isn't quite right, and it wasn't quite right.
Okay. The one organisation we haven't talked about is government.
Yeah.
I know CILT well. Obviously, I'm part of CILT, and I do know that it engages with government. Who do you think is more likely to listen? The ministers and the MPs, or the civil servants?
That is a very interesting question, which is the politician's answer. I think for the longer term, the civil servants, because they will be the ones in 5-10 years' time who will be delivering the ideas we've got. I think to get things kick-started, it is the ministers. And I'd like to use the example of Generation Logistics, which is an awareness campaign we're doing at the moment with DFT and Logistics UK. And without the DFT and the ministers' support, I don't think we'd have been able to kick it off. But now we're almost at the end of our first year. We had a ministerial roundtable last week. So I think now when we go into the more operational phase, it'll be the civil servants and the relationships we have there that keep things going, that they feed into us. Could you look at this? Could you think about that? But to really get something going and get it in the public eye, the ministers are really good for that. And to have their backing is invaluable.
So seeing as you've raised Generation Logistics, that gives me the chance to talk about one of my all-time heroes, Steve Grunnett.
Yep.
And he was really responsible for starting that off, wasn't he, with Think Logistics?
Think Logistics, yeah.
Probably quite a few years ago now. I would venture to suggest if it wasn't for people like Steve that actually did something about it, Generation Logistics wouldn't exist. And that government doesn't drive the change, it reacts to it. And that it's up to industry, the professions, to drive that change, because if they don't, others won't. Do you agree with that, or is that
No, I think so. It needs somebody to really care about something to get it going. And you're absolutely right. If nobody had cared about raising the awareness of the profession, getting it into schools, getting it into universities, we wouldn't be talking about Generation Logistics today.
But the reason that they care is because they can't get people to go and work there.
That is very true.
Which is why organisations like yours are so important. And if people who are listening have got to remember one thing from your podcast today, what would it be? Bearing in mind we've talked about a few different areas.
I think that the industry is so broad, there will be a job for you there, whether you're a graduate, coming in at 16 looking for apprenticeship, or changing your career in your 40s or your 50s. It is so broad and there are so many different opportunities. There will be a job there for you. We're not very good at talking about ourselves. We're not very good at explaining what we do, but there are so many different opportunities there. Just have a look. There will be a role for you.
Okay, and seeing as we're in Liverpool and it takes its sport seriously, football, rugby or something else?
I have to give a nod to my father here, who was born in Darlington, which means I've had to support Darlington Town Football Club since I was old enough to know what black and white looked like. So I support football, but very low-level football.
Does that mean Darlington plays at a low level?
I couldn't possibly comment.
Okay, well, apart from asking about your music tastes, I'm going to more or less think I've asked you everything I wanted to.
Very much a girl of the 80s. So on my playlist, I've got ABBA, I've got Meatloaf, I've got Iron Maiden, bit of prog rock with Genesis, some random stuff like the Wurzels Combine Harvester song, and yeah, anything else that's good to walk to with a bit of a beat, really.
And have you still got the outfits?
I have. I have been known to dress up in, yes, a la ABBA on occasion.
Well, there we go. Perfect, seeing as we're in Liverpool for your revision. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for letting me ask you so many questions and really embracing all of those and answering them so kindly for me. I suppose I ought to ask if you've got anything you want to ask me.
Oh, thanks. I had been thinking, and I know how surprised you were when I said I'd had to sort of pretend I didn't have a child when I was working. How do you think life's changed for working mothers and people with families during your working career?
When I look back and I compare to when I was a child, and if I just sort of share with you a little story about when I took my driving test, and don't tell anybody, but I failed it first time. And I went into my mother's place of work in Southport and I bawled my eyes out and said, Mummy, I failed my test. She said, oh dear, I'm terribly sorry, can you go now? After I thought it was a bit odd. Anyway, when we got home, I asked her why, and she said, Beverley, when I applied for this job, I lied and said that I was 7 years younger than I really was, because otherwise they wouldn't have employed me, and so they think you're only 10. But the point is that she felt she had to lie about her age. These days, you don't even put your age on your application form. So everybody has to work out from, their application form roughly what sort of age they are. I think that's a great thing, in that it's a bit like blind recruitment, isn't it? So yeah. I think it's changed for the better.
No, that's great. And obviously, being a traffic commissioner, you had a heck of a position, in the full glare of everybody looking at you.
Yes.
Do you think they treated you differently because you were a woman?
I think they were a little bit surprised when I started, they being the blokes, were a little bit surprised. And I think if you go into any situation where it's different, you have to work really hard for them to understand you and hopefully like you. But you also have to earn their respect. And so I took my CPC exam because they would say, what do you know about trucks, love? And so that's why I did, and I tried to earn that respect. And also, I think in any role, no matter what it is, as long as you're a good listener and you're actually acting on what you've been told, then I think you'll get a long way. Plus, a little sense of humour goes a long way, I think.
Mm. And if you hadn't taken the career path you did, what would you have been doing? Would you be, I don't know, a musician, an author, an actress, an accountant?
I would never be an accountant, I can tell you that definitely. I'm a lawyer, and I've always loved doing the law. And there is a lot of similarity between being an actor and being a lawyer. You don't say I act for my client, by mistake. My first love would be interior design, which might surprise you. I wanted to be an architect when I was a little girl, but discovered you needed physics, and I was absolutely useless at science. But I can do interior design because you don't have to have physics to do interior design, so I would have probably done that. But then I would have had to have found a rich husband to look after me. Whereas one of the things that I'm really passionate about in terms of working with young people, and I was the chair of governors at my old school, is saying particularly to women and particularly to people from disadvantaged backgrounds, if you earn money, you can become financially independent, no matter who you are. That to me is the key. That financial independence is so important.
Oh, excellent. So, favourite colour?
Absolutely purple.
Fabulous.
Which is why you're wearing a purple dress.
Of course. I think just my last one. You've obviously been involved in setting a lot of legislation. What's the bit you're most proud of? The bit where you think that's actually the best bit I've ever done and changed in the society or in road users?
So my former colleague Joan Aitken, who's a traffic commissioner for Scotland, would talk about the invisibility of success. You can't say as a commissioner how many lives you've saved because you've made an operator do something. Operators who get it right every day can't say how many lives they've saved because they've done it right in the first place. And that to me is a measure of success. Traffic commissioners generally don't get much publicity, which is great. The transport industry generally doesn't get much publicity, which is great. We just carry on doing what we do every day, delivering for Great Britain. That's our success. That for me is what motivates me.
Okay, my very final question. Old classic car or something stonking and brand new with all the gadgets?
Old classic car. Definitely, probably something like an MG.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Beverley.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, you guys. Really great discussion. I think I'd definitely have to go with a more modern car than the classic car if it was myself. But anyway, thanks so much for Beverley and Sharon for being here today. And as I said, really interesting topics discussed. So if you want to hear more from Beverley, Sharon or ourselves at Aspian, or interested in the work we do, then follow us on our socials, LinkedIn, Instagram or our website, or give the team a call on 0151 209 2050. But thanks for listening for Rerouting Logistics. And just before you go, on Spotify, if you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to follow, save and click the notification bell. Or if you're watching or listening on YouTube, subscribe below and leave us a comment.